So, good evening everyone and welcome to this General Services Committee meeting. It's now 7 p.m. and I'd like to start the meeting. I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Item 1, apologies for absence. I've received an apology from Councillor Johnson with Councillor P. Arnold substituting and Councillor Worrell, an apology from Councillor Worrell with Councillor Watson substituting. Item 2, minutes of the previous meeting. I'd like to ask members to approve the following minutes. That is from the meeting on the 16th, the 22nd, the 23rd, the 24th, the 29th and the 30th of January 2024. Do I have agreement for the approval of those minutes?
Great.
Thank you. Item 3, urgent items of business. I have not agreed to any item of urgent business. Item 4, declarations of interest. Does anyone wish to make a declaration of interest? No, thank you. Item 5, overview and scrutiny functions. Can I ask Matt Bolter to present this item, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members. So this report details the work that members, officers in the Centre for Governance Scrutiny have undertaken on the overview and scrutiny function to date, and the report represents the culmination of phase 1 of the project. It delivers a refreshed and restructured overview and scrutiny committee structure, and associated terms of reference, plus an overview and scrutiny protocol which will input into the culture and practice of overview and scrutiny going forward. The report contains all the details, so I'm happy to take further questions. I think the only other thing I would add that's not included in the report was that Governance Board this week mentioned about associated remuneration of potential new roles in the overview and scrutiny function. And I just wanted to feedback here that I've contacted the Independent Remuneration Panel Chair. He's currently on holiday, but he did reply to me and he said that he would be able to convene a panel in either late March or just after Easter to consider the changing roles and associated remuneration. And I'll leave it there, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Any member like to comment? Councillor Watson.
Thank you, Matt. I've noticed about Lower Thames Crossing Task Force. That work still needs to be kept on the radar, and it still needs to be brought together as and when, depending on what happens. So can you just give some consideration, and can you just give me a bit of an idea of where that would be placed, and can that still continue in its current form, though sitting under scrutiny?
Yeah, Chair, thank you. Yes, Councillor, that the CFGS, when they came on site and they spoke to members and officers about the function, I think their rationale was that for overview and scrutiny to have standing within the council, it needed to take back some of those bigger issues that had been delegated to task forces like the Lower Thames Crossing Task Force. And absolutely the People Committee, the Place Committee would be the relevant committee that would consider Lower Thames Crossing. And yeah, it would absolutely be accommodated in the work programme as and when was required.
Councillor Kent.
So I think there are two things for me. I welcome the move to 3 scrutiny committees. Quite happy with the protocol, bearing in mind that it will be an organic document, and we'll kind of adjust it as we learn. So kind of welcome that, agree that. I am unhappy about ceasing the Lower Thames Crossing Task Force. I think the group met last week or the week before. Can I ask if they were consulted on ceasing the existence of the task force, and if they were, what their feedback was, and then I might come back.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Councillor Kent. The Centre for Governance Scrutiny undertook consultation with all chairs and overview and scrutiny members, and the Lower Thames Crossing Task Force would have been part of that consultation. I must admit I don't know the specific responses that any members from the Lower Thames Crossing Task Force gave to the Centre for Governance Scrutiny. I could find that out and provide that to this committee at a later stage.
I'm just very conscious that the Lower Thames Crossing is incredibly sensitive, it's incredibly important, and it's the one body that we have where members of the public sit alongside members to kind of look at an incredibly delicate and difficult issue. And I'm just really worried about how it looks and feels to the community if we're ceasing that one body where they've got absolute involvement. So at the moment, I can agree everything else, but I wouldn't be able to agree ceasing that task force this evening.
Dave, do you want to come in?
Just to try and be helpful, there may be an option, I'll look to colleagues to comment on this, but there may be an option for us to put this to the place scrutiny committee to organise, to commit to a task force that remains part of the scrutiny committee but operates as a task force within it, and obviously can constitute it in a way that replicates the sort of public involvement and so on that you're referring to, Councillor Kent. So that may be one option members want to consider, and subject to any issues arising from that.
Thank you. Councillor Snell.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I mean, I welcome the proposals as well. I think it's something that's needed given the current circumstances we find ourselves in. I was going to raise a second about substitutes, but yeah, I think the Lower Thames Crossing Task Force is important, and surely we could find a way to actually in the documentation we're putting out saying if it's going to sit in place, I assume, then the new committee will be set up with a directive to immediately set up a task finish group, stroke task, whatever you need to call it, upon its constitution. And I know they run for 10 weeks, but we could maybe change the wording for that, so that can be a rolling committee potentially. That might work. But my actual question was going to be regarding, it's just that there should be no power to appoint substitutes to any over and scrutiny committee, which we do that at the moment. What's the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, thank you. If I may, Chair, that's a good point, because that was something that when it was produced I questioned as well. I think the rationale was that the committees are much larger. So the proposal is that you have 10 members per committee. And if you've got 3 committees, that's 30 members overall. And the CFGS, their rationale presented to us was that overview scrutiny should be important and members should attend. And if they don't, then there should be enough members on there to represent a thread and a continuity, and that substitutes could potentially be a way in which members don't engage fully with overview and scrutiny. So I think it was a balance between the sheer number of members we're suggesting go on each committee, but also underlining the fact that members should be making an effort to attend these meetings, and if they don't, that they can't rely on substitutes to cover their position.
I can see the rationale for that, and I get that there's 30 members is a lot of people, but human nature being as it is, we could have and plus, illness, and it's, for example, during the pandemic, if we have something similar where where we're not doing the same things within the pandemic, like shutting down, you might have sort of 3, 4, 5 people off ill at the same time, which could seriously impact upon. It could all be Labour group, it could be all Conservative group. That could be an issue. So I think maybe that does need to be looked at. If you want to limit the number of substitutions, saying it can only be 1 or maybe 2 at best, that might be a way around it. But I do think there does need to be a way we can have substitutes on there. Thank you.
Councillor Raper.
I had the same question as Councillor Snell, because if you think about it, there are 10 people on a committee, but you only need 4 to be quorate. So I think I just agree with what you've said, really.
Thank you.
Councillor Kent.
Yeah, I want to agree with Graham as well. I really do understand the thrust that says turning up to a committee is important, but there are times when people just can't make it, and it's okay if you have 2 large groups, then both those groups will be represented. If you have a smaller group that only has kind of 1 maybe two people on a committee, then they can lose their representation if somebody is ill or if somebody is working that evening or whatever. So there has to be a kind of compromise, doesn't there, where you don't say if you've got 5 members you can have 5 substitutes, but you can have 1 substitute, 2 substitutes, and group leaders are just going to have to kind of make sure that they are used by exception and not used kind of regularly. And those of us who have kind of been group leaders also know that the ability to put somebody who's new as a substitute, so they get papers sent through, so they do take an interest in the workings of a committee, is a really nice kind of induction into the way that the council operates. So I would ask that we just look at that again. And on the Lower Thames Crossing Task Force, I think Dr Smith's suggestion is useful, and I would ask that if we accept that it's the first thing that the Place Committee looks at in the new municipal year, and should they decide to establish that kind of working group, task group, that we then revisit the decision. But I would still reiterate this evening, I won't be voting to cease the task group, and I don't think it's for us to try to mandate a new committee to make a decision. I think that decision should be taken by the Place Committee, and then we do what's necessary to strike off the task force if that's what they decide to do.
Councillor Arnold.
Just kind of following on from Councillor Kent, I think in here it says that each committee can do 2 task force, and I wonder if in place we should make that 3, so that still gives the chair and the committee the option of setting 2 like everybody else, with the proviso that the 3rd is Lower Thames Crossing. Maybe that would work.
Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thank you. So under the Place, completely agree with everything being said. There is only 2 task force. One of those task force, we've already been told, is going to be over the local plan consultation of how that works going forward. So that's gone. That means that's only 1 task force that's going to be left. And if you put the Lower Thames Crossing in, then the chair of that place will have no task force to actually assimilate to. I really do feel that the Lower Thames Crossing needs to be set under Place is fine, but that's it. Exactly what Councillor Arnold just said, and they still have that room for 2. Place is massive. It's a real big agenda sitting under there, and I think some consideration needs to be thought about what is going to happen. But we've got massives of the Lower Thames Task Force, which I think should stay, and we're going to have the local plan sort of stuff that's going to come through as well.
So can I just ask for a clarification, because I remember Councillor Maney, when he took the local plan to full council, I didn't think it was to be part of ONS. I thought it was to be a separate, the local plan was going to be a separate group.
Yes, if I may, Chair. So my understanding is that the development plan at full council was agreed as a working group, and that's only to my memory. So a working group would sit outside of overview and scrutiny, would be an officer member group, which would then feed into the public committee decision making, either through council or cabinet or overview and scrutiny, as it saw fit and as it came about. So in my mind, and I'm more than happy to check the detail, but in my mind, the development plan would sit outside of the task and finish operation that the Place Committee. That's not to say that the Place Committee could establish a task and finish related to the development plan. I think I was going to add, Chair, if I may, that I think the comments on the Lower Thames Crossing Task Force and the substitute points I take on board, and I think they're valuable comments. I think in terms of substitutes, I would possibly suggest maybe having 2 substitutes per group, per committee, because then that gives you that flexibility. If the sub is unwell, for example, you still have a plan B. And I'll look into that. And I think, and likewise, the Lower Thames Crossing Task Force, we can obviously put that in practice and ask the Place Committee and do the work before the meeting its first meeting rather, so that they can consider a scope of a task and finish on the Lower Thames crossing. I think the only other thing I would add is obviously we've employed 2 new overview and scrutiny officers who are really good and are doing having a great impact. But obviously, if we have 3 committees all wanting to do lots of tasks and finishes all at the same time, we've got to think about our resources and how we do the task and finishes properly and to a sufficient quality.
Thank you, Matt. So, if no other, Councillor Watts.
So, sorry, Chair. So, if the development group is going to be sitting outside the ONS structure to do the development local plan, why can't the task force? Why can't the Lower Thames task force?
So it can. So are you asking the current Lower Development Plan task force?
You've just said that going forward with the local plan, it will be in a development group that sits outside the ONS. It doesn't sit as a task. So I'm asking if you can apply that into the local plan development, why can't you apply exactly that to the Lower Thames task force? Leave it as it is, sitting outside the ONS group.
I see what you mean. So the current task force as it stands.
Yeah.
So a working group has a slightly different arrangement. So the task force is formal and it has agendas and formal minutes. A democratic services officer tends to take minutes, etc. I think the proposal that was agreed at full council, again, if my memory serves me right, was that a working group is a more flexible meeting between officers and members. The Centre for Governance Scrutiny has taken the view that overview and scrutiny needs to have more status in the council, and therefore it should have more oversight of some of those bigger ticket items. I think the working group that's proposed is a more practical relationship between officers and members to discuss issues to do with the plan as and when they arise. And obviously anything coming out of that working group that needs to funnel into overview and scrutiny or cabinet, it can do so. And obviously if overview and scrutiny then wanted to create a task and finish group based on anything that the working group gave it in terms of information or activity, it could do so.
So if I could... Sorry, Councillor Watson? No.
I just think it should just stay as a situ as it is. And what we're talking about here is recommendations, not set in stone. This is what they want. Now, I really welcome the fact that it would be a more robust ONS, but the Lower Thames, for us, cross-party, council, and across the whole borough, the Lower Thames crossing is still sitting there, though it might be dormant, but it's still sitting there. And so I just think that I don't understand why it just can't continue in its current form, because, and then, you know, not feeding, but it can go to cabinet or wherever the governance arrangements, or tighten up the governance arrangements than what it is now to report into somewhere. But all I'm saying is, I know it's a recommendation, but I just think that is probably one of the most important groups with residents that sits for this council for this stuff. So I'm just a little bit why can't it stay as it is? Be honest with you, Matt, and then just feed in.
Yeah, I completely understand your sentiment there, Councillor, and I think one of the reasons the Centre for Governance Scrutiny made the recommendation as well is that there are only so many days in the week that we can hold a committee meeting, and I think the CFGS felt that if we were going to put more status into overview and scrutiny, then members are going to need more capacity to meet as overview and scrutiny. If we're going to have task and finish groups, if they meet of an evening, it was trying to reduce the committee burden throughout a month so that overview and scrutiny could expand into the things that it wants to do. But I think, you know, as a committee, as members, you need to decide how you want to undertake the work, and you know, it's up to you whether you wish to maintain certain groups or committees for whatever reason, and that's something we can, you know, bend the municipal calendar around. But so that's what CFGS represented.
So just For me, I mean, at the moment, I mean, I was going to mention this later on. For me, it's quite disappointing that none of the chairs of the ONS ever come to Cabinet and give a report. Certainly since I've been leader, I think once it's happened. Lower Thames Crossing forms part of that as well. They should be reporting back to Cabinet. So I'm just wondering, I hear what you're saying, but I'm just wondering if it's part of the ONS and it's the Task and Finish group, and we say to that particular ONS, we want you to use one of your Task and Finish as the Lower Thames Crossing, it perhaps will give it a little bit more authority, because it'll report back into ONS, and then hopefully the chair of that ONS will then come to Cabinet report. So Lower Thames Crossing gets, if you like, 3 airings, because we're raising the standard of ONS. So I hear what you're saying, but I'm just wondering if this gives it a bit of a boost.
Sorry, that's if the chair comes into Cabinet.
I mean, I would hope with only 3 chairs they would.
But let's hope. But what I'm saying is I don't want that work to be lost. I don't want that group to be lost. I don't want it's become so good as a group, and it's gone on and been so effective fighting the corner for Thurrock, that I just don't want that work to go anywhere. And I still want them to feel they've got a status and a say in this council and with us.
Dave.
Chair, I think the first point for us to be clear about from members is what the critical purpose of the Lower Thames Crossing group would be. And the reason I beg that question of members is if it's because you see it as an instrument for sharing information, gathering and campaigning on the issues that are important to you, then I would suggest to you the best form for that to take is a working group. So it meets regularly, it has an established agenda, but it is working as a group, fulfilling your collective needs around the Lower Thames Crossing. If you want the group to be a decision-making group, either it's making formal recommendations through the system to scrutinise or to go to Cabinet, then of course it needs to be established on a more formal basis as a committee, either under scrutiny or separate from scrutiny. If you want to go down that route, then my only word of caution about that is that if you separate it out from scrutiny, so it sits alone outside what will be three powerful overview and scrutiny committees, then the unintended consequence might be that you make it less influential because it's sitting at the side of a system that has a cabinet and 3 strong overview and scrutiny committees, and then this, for want of a better term, small committee that's important to you but is not having the influence. So understanding the purpose behind what you want really can help us advise you best about what form it should take, whether it should be a working group, a separate committee, or a task and finish committee of the overview and scrutiny committee. So if that helps. Probably, I'm begging more questions than answers.
I'm just going to bring in Councillor Arnold first, and then I'll...
You kind of beat me to it a bit, because I was going to say surely we can have an informal working group, if they are informal, between ward councillors and community residents already involved, because I don't think there's any of us that would disagree that the London Thames Crossing group were and are important to us all. So if you have that informal group, that group can still report into Cabinet every month by asking and requesting to come to us to ask questions or to bring us information, and from that process determine whether down the road you need to set a task finish group to formalise it more if there is a decision. But I don't know, but obviously, like I say, Dave's brought that up now, Dr. Smith's brought that up.
Azzy?
So the other thing that I thought it was really, I think it's important to highlight for members to be aware, overview and scrutiny have additional powers in holding the executive to account, in access to information that some of our other committees don't have, and that's set out in legislation. So if there was information that the task and finish group, if it was set up, they'd have more access and more, I don't know how to put it, they were able to get a lot more than if it was just a standalone working group or a committee that didn't come under the powers of overview and scrutiny. And that's the other thing to consider, is the powers that overview and scrutiny give to committee members.
And thank you. John, turn your mic off. Sorry. Did you? I don't know if that was that your hand.
Yeah, I think we're kind of getting a little bit bogged down with this, is that we're not going to be losing the committee. I can't imagine that a chair, under instruction from his group leader, would not insist on instituting a working group for the Lower Thames Crossing. And let's be honest, the Lower Thames Crossing has been great at publicising the issues. It's been great at highlighting all sorts of inadequacies of the plan, and it's been great in bringing councillors and the community together. But as the leader suggested, in terms of effectiveness within council, I think it's been actually not particularly effective at all in terms of decision making. And I do feel that sitting underneath the scrutiny committee will give it far more weight, and any recommendations that come through the scrutiny route would be far more effective than they are at the moment. And I think, if anything, actually it could be beneficial for it to come under the scrutiny function rather than sit independently outside, where, let's face it, they can make a recommendation which none of us have to listen to, should we choose not to. But a scrutiny committee has far more power and carries far more weight. So I think we're probably getting a bit aerated for no reason. I can't imagine a circumstance where this committee wouldn't take place as working group. So that's my opinion anyway.
Councillor Kent.
So I think there are two things there. One, it should never be for a group leader as a member of the executive to try and instruct a scrutiny committee to do anything. It should be for the scrutiny committee to come up with its own conclusion. The bit that still worries me is we are where we are. I had real concerns when we established the Lower Thames Crossing task group. There was no such thing as a task group. We had committees, we had subcommittees, we had this, that and the other, and this is something new that we invented. But having invented it and having involved members of the public, members of the community on that committee, I am really loath to lose their input. Now, if the new place committee decides that it wants to establish a working group or whatever and invite those representatives on, then I would be content with that. But I'm not content to agree this evening that we cease the task group. I might be content once place has been established and they come forward with a recommendation.
Thank you. So probably try and deal with some of these. So the first one was substitutes. I think there was a nod around the room that there should be the recommendation that each political group should be allowed to appoint 2 substitutes to each committee. Yeah? Everyone's happy with that? With regard to the Lower Thames Crossing, could I make a suggestion that we agree the recommendations, but we also, I don't know how we word this, but we put something in there that says that the express wish of this General Services Committee is that when these overview and scrutiny committees are formalised, which is the new municipal year, that we strongly recommend that the ONS for Place takes one of its task and finish groups and sets that up as the Lower Thames Crossing. So it has that formal route and it's able to, like we've all said, have the power of being an ONS committee. Because the Lower Thames Crossing is going to continue meeting until the new municipal year. So it's not going to be there's not going to be no break. And the chair of that committee can then take that on, and I'm sure they will hear what we say. If we do that, would it be worthwhile, because that takes away, as somebody said, one of their task and finish, that we recommend that each ONS are able to have 3, or we add one to the place. If we add one to the place, so they're able to have 2 plus the Lower Thames Crossing. Would that be agreeable?
Not for me, no.
Can I? can I suggest that, like, we agree the other bit of that recommendation, but defer the decision on the Lower Thames Crossing Falls until the overview and scrutiny chairs are in place and we've had a further discussion, and then we can decide on where we go with those options. Does that work?
Yeah,
Easier,
so can we
better?
reword that? Would everyone agree with that? We just take out, so on recommendation 1.4, we take out Lower Thames Crossing, leave the other ones in there, and then put in a deferment that the Lower Thames Crossing. But it's in place anyway. It's in place until the end of the municipal year anyway, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, but I think
So it'll
the
be until
the concern is that it will
chairs are in
cease.
place.
It will
and then
cease,
it won't start
and then it won't
again if
start.
the chair decides not to.
And then revisit that in the new municipal year. Yeah? Everyone happy with that? Any other comments? Go to the recommendations. So recommendation 1.1, agree the restructuring of overview and scrutiny functions to consist of 3 committees, people, place and corporate, as detailed in the report appendices. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. 1.2, that the new overview and scrutiny committee structure starts for the municipal year of 24-25. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
1.3, agree the terms of reference of these committees as Appendix 1 and delegate authority to the monitoring officer to include them in the Constitution. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
1.4, to cease the Lower Development Plan Task Force and the Hidden Extreme Harms and Prevention Committee from 24-25 municipal year in accordance with the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny. Final recommendations. Is that agreed?
And to defer. To the defer bit.
No, because
Why?
you missed out that committee completely.
Well, I missed the Lower Thames Crossing out. Sorry? I didn't.
No, you didn't.
No?
I didn't.
So I deleted Lower Thames Crossing Task Force and just included Local Development and Plan Task Force and Hidden and Extreme Harms Prevention Committee. Yeah? I was going to come on to that as a separate thing, yeah? So he's telling you to let him finish. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Or would you like me to read it again? No. 1.5, formally adopt the overview and scrutiny protocol attached as at Appendix 2 and incorporate it in the Constitution as part of the forthcoming revised overview and scrutiny chapter. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Now I'm looking to officers for 1.6. Azzy?
So to assist, we could say with 1.6 that the substitutes to be amended for 2 councillors per group per committee.
Yep.
So hopefully that's agreed. Substitutes, yeah. And then the next one, which will be 1.7, that the task and finish group. No. That the Lower Thames Crossing Task Force will continue until the Place Overview and Scrutiny Committee Chair.
Until Place Committee consider
the work.
A task and finish.
A task and fit a specific.
Recommendation by the General Services Committee to set up a task and finish in the name of the Lower Thames Crossing.
Correct, but we also need that recommendation also to state that it doesn't impact on Place's other 2. So Place would have 3.
1.8.
What I read.
So 1.8 would be ONS Place has 3 task and finish groups. Should it adopt the Lower Thames Crossing task and Yep, sorry, Councillor.
Should it also say whilst the Lower Thames Crossing Task Group exists, or once, eventually when that's finished and we're not having it, should we then go back to the same as the others? I don't know.
So does that mean we've got a 1.9?
No.
So we're clear on that, yeah? So the crux of it is Lower Thames Crossing stays until the end of the municipal year, when the new ONSs is set up. The recommendation to the chair of place is one of their task and finish groups is Lower Thames Crossing, and then the Lower Thames Crossing action group will cease at that point. Yep, okay. Is everyone happy with that?
You're putting about 3 places, yeah, under flood.
Yes, yes. Okay, thank you. So moving on to item 6. I'll now go into exempt session for the next item. Do members agree to the exclusion of public and press?
Great.
Thank you. So welcome back to members of the public and other members that may be listening. So one final item is that I've been advised by Democratic Services that a further General Services Committee will need to convene before March full council for the annual pay policy statement of 2024-25 to be presented to this committee. I believe that Jenny has emailed members today suggesting the 12th of March 2024 at 7 p.m. If you are able to respond to her, please could you do so? There being no further business, I conclude the business of this meeting this evening and now declare the meeting closed at 20:03. Thank you, everyone.